The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed in the podcast belong solely to the host
That would make great
and
for
not the
outtakes
host's
in the podcast,
past,
though,
present,
talking
or
about
future
bloody nipples.
employers.
Yeah. No, it could only help our numbers. But,
Yeah.
All right. So 3, 2, 1, go. Hello, everybody. Welcome back. We're at full strength this week. It's Brian, Mr. Betcher, and Miss Berlin for Breaking Down Security.
Yay.
Mr.
I'm back.
We must have.
Hi.
Oh, there you go. It's the
Strong
dude,
silent type.
It's audio. You can't. This doesn't work. This doesn't work.
He's waving for those of you listening and
Right,
not watching, like the
For
two of
closed
us.
captioning purposes, and wave. And wave. Yeah. So I'm glad everybody's back. Miss Berlin's been out what appears to be a couple of weeks when
I'm
in
so
fact
sorry.
it's been almost 6, but you got family, you got things, you got to go do those things.
Yeah, like sickness and work and something else. I can't remember what it was, but
that's
like
okay.
I felt terrible.
It's all good. It's all good. Family, family's first.
Oh, that's right.
as
I went out and saw Michael. I went and flew
That's
out
right.
to Yuma and saw Michael, which was kind of fun sometimes.
Was it hot there?
I think it got up to 95 maybe the one day.
It's not too bad, I guess. But
No.
considering
but, I mean, it's
was
like
probably
like you can see Mexico from Yuma. Like it's right there. That's right there.
Right.
Like I drove down the street to go look at what is a self-proclaimed center of the world in the middle of nowhere in Yuma. That some French guy just decided to buy like 500 acres of land in the desert and declare it the center of the world. So I went to drive to that and had to drive through like a checkpoint, which they just, waved me through. Yeah.
Yeah, they're more than willing to let you leave. It's coming back in is the problem.
Yes, right.
Yeah.
Well, it was a checkpoint on this side.
It was. And I'm like a white chick driving a Beamer. So
yeah, so they're just making sure you don't have any people stashed in your your trunk and stuff like that.
Yes, because people are trying to smuggle Americans to Mexico.
Yes,
and that's really a huge deal.
Honestly.
So, yeah. Yeah. So, well, I'm glad you're back. I'm glad, Mr. Betcher, I'm glad you're here with us as well. Been a busy week. We just last Friday, the 29th, we did an interview, part number 2 with Blue Mara. Of course, Miss Berlin was suspiciously on mute the whole time because she got triple booked because of some stuff. But it was okay.
Scheduling on my part.
No, it's not poor scheduling. We actually interviewed Nate O'Reilly, which you can go back and listen to. It was a paid for podcast, so the check cleared and everything. So we got some money out of that. But I thought it was a really good discussion on not just some of the stuff that Blue Mara does, but talking about logging requirements and maturity. And we talked about ways that you should be logging via like API if it's an application based system. I did not realize that Blue Mara has a classification for their logs, and they tend to tailor it based on how some orgs work. If they're more app heavy versus, network heavy, they would, put more weight on some of these logs, and talked about what happens if you have devices that won't give you logs. Like if you're using managed systems, like, maybe you have a firewall that's being managed by somebody else. And it's like, oh, well, we don't want to give you logs. It's like, you can actually watch the actions of that device, or, do a timeline kind of thing where you can see the packet on the outside come through. There's a bit of a fuzzy area, and then you can see the packets on the other side and look at timelining and stuff like that. So I thought it was a really interesting discussion. As with most of our vendor discussions, they aren't like, oorah, go get some of that Blue Mara. We're kind of just talking about things, and then, Blue Mara does stuff. Hope you enjoy that one. So, let me see. We're going to do a little news this week. I think that'll be good.
Yeah.
And I'm going to try for Mr. Frank out there. We're going to try to keep it to around 30 minutes for you there, Frank. Okay. So you can continue listening.
You're welcome.
You won't have, you're welcome. Because we love you, man.
But if we do it at like 40 minutes and he listens at 1.5 speed,
Oh, that's right. Okay.
Right?
Yeah, try that. We'll just talk.
Like I always listen to podcasts at 1.5 speed, but then
Oh.
I feel like I've never listened to myself at 1.5, and I feel like I would just sound like a chipmunk. So I'm just not
Right.
going to do it.
Well, what I'm doing for Frank is making sure that when he speeds it up to 1.5, that this actually
You
sounds like it.
sound normal.
Oh God. All right. Anyway,
Too much fun.
all right. So one of the things that, and actually to add to what we're going to talk about with NATO, but I know you talk about this because, it's your life. During the research that I found on doing some of the logging and the maturity in the organizations was back in January, we had, I forget her name. We had somebody on talking about the new SolarWinds executive directorate orders that came out about trying to make sure that things like SolarWinds didn't happen again. And one of those things that I found during my discussion was the federal government is making it a requirement to log certain things, and they're going through a log maturity model where in 18 months you need to be at what is called level 3 maturity of logs. And one, I was kind of scared because I was like, well, level 1 is what everybody should be doing, but if they're not even doing that, then oh my God, they're not logging at all. But what I found interesting was the ideas of logging here. So if you go to they have specific tiers. So EL0 through EL3. Basic logging is minimum logging of data, time standards, event forwarding. So they've added all these various requirements, and they have a whole appendix, and there's a link in our notes to that. But what they're trying to do is build in more maturity. So, things like visibility, asset management, software, management, all those things are embedded into systems to make sure that this stuff doesn't happen again. And I find that quite interesting. And I can only imagine how long it actually took them to make this. Were you aware of that, Ms. Berlin, that there was a logging maturity model out there that the government has to follow? Uh-oh. I think we lost Ms. Berlin. I think she's in a hotel. So
I'll tell you what, I
think I'm
wasn't.
back.
Oh, okay. Good, Mr. Betcher. What was your thought there?
No, I wasn't aware that this was published until today.
Okay.
So
Same.
yeah.
Yeah.
I was trying to read through it all because I was just talking the other day about how, not tied to Blumira because I feel like some of the partnerships that we have would not really like this, but
Right.
completely third party type thing where I just want to name and shame some companies that are terrible at logging.
Well, you could do that, and then I'll have to go bleep them out. So
Right.
I don't know if it's a good thing or not.
Yeah, I don't have to on here, but
Okay.
there's
cool.
just
They know who they are.
I'm sure Brian knows too. Just like there are multi-billion-dollar companies that have the worst logging.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
You know,
I'm looking at the thing now, and it says operating systems, Windows infrastructure and operating systems. And it says file and object access. So, and then it says you need 12 months of active storage. So if I access a file on let's say a server, I got to store that for 12 months.
I think you have to store the logs, right?
Yeah, the
Right.
logs.
But no one does file integrity monitoring or file and object like that is a lot of logging.
Right.
That's a ton of logging. Yeah.
Holy cow.
Objects, that's a process, right?
Yeah, and a DLL
Right.
or anything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's like putting Sysmon on your Sysmon and just cranking it up. Right.
Yep.
That's probably I don't know, a gig a day on one system
Per box, right? Not counting
Okay.
like an actual like active server or file server or anything like that.
Mm.
I mean, there's some good ones here. but
Which one are you?
this
Which
is
one are you
very
looking at,
noisy.
Mr. Betcher?
I'm
Page
looking
20.
at page 20.
Oh, okay. Yeah, y'all are way down there. Okay. I was looking at like the, the EL1 version there, some of the things that I raised an eyebrow to, it's on page 5 there in Appendix A, was they talking about source IPs, IPv4 and IPv6, status codes, response times. Then they say where appropriate, username and or ID will be included. Where appropriate, command executed shall be included. Where possible, all data will be formatted as key value pairs, allowing for easy extraction. So that's like, JSON type format where it's easy to parse, which is not a bad thing. I do worry a little bit about the usernames and user IDs. There's a lot of, I think there's a lot of data, and, we often tell people to make sure you're logging, but not putting things in there like, I've found passwords in log files. I don't see the need for a username in a log file.
What?
That's what it says on page 5.
There should always be usernames in log files. Talk about how hard it is to like give appropriate actions for like fixing things if you don't know who's done what.
Well, it says where appropriate though. That's my thing. Okay, I can definitely see that for like user root logged into this system, which makes sense. But the where appropriate is like, maybe you don't need it for, hey, this account logged in or this email logged in or whatever. There might be some places where user IDs and password, user IDs or usernames may not be needed.
I've never not needed them. How about that?
Okay, that's great.
I've needed them in more places where they've not been.
Right.
Yeah.
And
I'm always asked, well, who did this? And it's in the logs, right? So yeah.
Right. Okay. And it says where possible, unique identifier will be included or shall be included for event correlation. A unique event ID shall be defined per event type. So that's
Okay.
they've definitely done their due diligence on creating like a basic EL1.
I do like that they ask for UTC. That's pretty great.
Oh yeah. They should definitely be forcing everybody to use UTC for. I think we've had a number of people on talking about forensics and having to do that time conversion or getting things mixed up for events.
It's horrible.
So, yeah. When I was in the Navy and setting time servers and everything, we had to use time servers for the Gov. We couldn't even use like time.com or time.windows.com or whatever.
Right.
We had to use nist.gov or whatever because it had to be a specific stratum of time server. So they do get down to the nth degree on this, like intermediate logging categories, publication of the standardized log structures. So they have to CISA will make available reference guides for schema, inspection of encrypted data. So federal agencies will store and retain in clear text form the data or metadata from Appendix C collected in their environment. I'm going to have to read more into that because I'm not sure if storing things in clear text is a good idea or not. I have to see what Appendix C is about. But yeah, there's definitely a lot of things here that could go. So logging requirements, technical details. Okay. Yeah. It's count creation. So yeah, they have all of these. I think you can, Mr. Betcher and you can probably go down through these and tell the Windows event codes for these various things. So, my thing is, okay. So one thing that got me on this and the other thing I wanted to talk about alongside this was, I work for an organization that tends to try to create policy internally. And, I mentioned this and I mentioned the thing that we're about to talk about in a few minutes. And they were like, oh yeah, we already have stuff like that in our environment. I was like, okay, great. But it's internal and it's not being published anywhere to be, best practices to be adopted. Or inviting ourselves as part of a larger organization or community to help get things done and standardized across the environments. And now we've got the U.S. government here creating this thing, and I was like, why didn't they? Are they following ISO standards? Are they following any kind of international standards where people don't have to go, oh well, okay, we're following ISO standards, and now we have to do the government stuff. I did not see anything, and albeit I haven't read through past like page 20, but there might, if there's any other sections where like, oh, we're following this and then we're just adding these things, that would be great. But it seems like they rolled their own log management process here, and I just think that there's a reason we have ISO standards. There's a reason we have PCI and all these other ones that require specific logging requirements, that they could have just borrowed from those and said, hey, use ISO, but instead,
Right.
or use ISO minus or something like this, or if you're following ISO, then you're good to go.
Well,
Um,
and if you look at like everything that they're asking to get to that level 3 is going to be millions of dollars for companies that use anything based on log ingestion, like volume.
how so?
Like because I mean, if you turn on like process, like what was it? What were we just
Process
talking about?
create and terminate.
Yeah.
And file and an object access.
Yeah,
Those
you turn on that
ginormous.
in any normal organization, they will spend their yearly budget on nothing but log ingestion.
Yeah, you're talking terabytes a day, depending on the
Oh,
size
my.
of the company.
Hmm.
Okay. So they say 12 months of active storage and 18 months of cold data storage. So I was talking with NATO about, hard drive rooms full of hard drives where,
Yeah.
that data has to be stored or whatever. I'm imagining that there's going to be some more budget, if it hasn't already been set aside, for things like what Amazon Glacier or whatever, where they can put this stuff into cold storage and then,
Yeah.
purge it as they need it.
You'll have a single SAN for each event ID.
You're right.
Oof. Oof, that would be rough. Yeah. Well, I do know that like folks like the Navy have already been, trying to build out their, NMCI or whatever they call it now, the next gen network. So they've already been working in this, and the government's got the Azure side there, with JEDI, the Azure contract. So Microsoft, I'm sure, is more than willing to allow them to pay them for, log storage and analysis. And those are definitely things that can be done. I do like that they've included other operating systems like Linux, BSD, Mac OS, like storing varlog cron, varlog kernel log, boot log. So there's the problem is some of these files are, especially like btemp, wtemp, and utemp, I think are binary. They're not in an easy key pair, format that is, at least the last time that I've ever tried to view wtemp, it was a binary format, so it wasn't easily ingestible without opening it in a specific manner. But
Yeah.
It'll be interesting that if they are on track with this, because I believe that within a year they were supposed to be at like level 2, otherwise they were supposed to have some kind of nasty Graham meeting where people were sitting around trying to figure out why that didn't happen. So.
This is pretty vague stuff. I'm looking at the Windows stuff and it says registry access. You have to log the registry. Do you know how many times Windows accesses
my
the
gosh.
registry every second?
Right.
I mean, it could be hundreds. Yeah, no one
Yeah.
does that. No one logs registry access.
But if you notice at the top of Appendix C, it says that exceptions to requirements set below are full packet capture data for 72 hours.
Full PCAP for 72 hours.
I
Jesus.
mean, that might be less data than logging all of that.
That's only network data though. That ain't OS level data.
Don't
right.
tell them that. Don't tell
Oh
them
my
that.
God.
That's what it says in the appendix.
I'm starting to think that this is pretty juvenile.
Well,
Yes.
I mean,
so-
to be blunt.
Well, yeah, but the problem is, so SolarWinds was something that pervaded their entire, back end infrastructure. And, one, they're trying to stop another SolarWinds from happening again. But, to be fair, SolarWinds would have been something that would have either collected these logs or would have generated enough logs to be for ingestion as well. And I only, I do see where they're just, it sounds like they're trying to, shoot the whole moon at one time instead of, or, eating the whole elephant at one time instead of taking a bite, whatever those business things are. they're trying to do too much at once, I think, in this case, where they're so I mean,
Yeah, they are,
it'll-
but this is going to cause a lot of confusion. I mean, nobody
so?
can do this really, unless you're really small and you got a pretty big budget for a sim. You know, this is going to be really tough. I don't know if they thought this through.
well, it is the government, so not to be too political, but I find that things like this are rarely. This was written a month or two after SolarWinds, so this section specifically, or the whole executive bit was. Nope, I'm sorry, August 27th. So yeah, they've had a little time to look through this, but yeah, I mean, maybe they have not consulted.
They could have
people.
chosen, yeah, they could have chosen a mature logging thing and said, hey, just do that,
Right.
certify with them, or
Right.
the Windows logging cheat sheet that's been around for a decade, right? It's pretty mature. Just something that's already published
Right.
and industry standards. They don't have
Right.
to reinvent the wheel here.
Yeah, that's why I said ISO standards or what have you. Yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
So, well, that's why we have companies like Miss Berlin's company to help out with that. But what I wonder is how this will drive technology. Will this make companies want to do, invest in less? Because there was also things like Docker and Kubernetes and container logs as well. But so, I mean, will this reduce, I don't know, the number of servers, for instance, or will this reduce the, are we looking at technology changes in this case? Because it's like, well, if I have to buy 500 Windows machines, then that's 500 times the logs that I'm going to be, having to log on or something like that. I mean, I didn't see anything about users, but I mean, this may only just be servers, or it just may be areas of import for, specific infrastructure.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm looking at the Amazon logs, and so you need 12 months of active storage and 18 months of cold storage, and you need CloudTrail, CloudWatch, config logs, access logs, flow logs, WAF logs, Shield, GuardDuty, and Security Hub. Amanda, I don't know that much about this, but what kind of size are we talking about for all of that?
I don't even know. A lot. That's a lot of that's a lot
massive,
of data.
and that's very expensive too. I mean, you
Yeah.
could do it, but that would be very expensive.
I mean,
Yeah.
it would be expensive enough to do even a fifth of this. Like most people don't even come close to any of this, like at all.
Well, when you say that, are you saying that most people who do log
Most
in well
enterprises.
don't-
Yeah, most people that log now don't.
and do it well?
yeah.
Where are they?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I would say not even half.
Right.
Well, maybe half of this list, maybe.
Right.
I haven't made it all the way through the appendix yet, but like some of these, I mean, just like we talked, like the process creation and termination and the file and object access, like what are like some of these like don't rarely log. Like you get like maybe one log a month, right? So like audit log cleared, right? You can
Right.
just alert anytime that happens for the most part because it very rarely happens. But when you have like, 100,000 events or logs every second for file and object access, like that stacks up. And like you can't even make use of it. Like if
Right.
you're doing maybe some anomalous like activity stuff or whatever, but that's so much data that most people don't have the money to store it or to transport it, or like the network volume, like even like the size of pipe that they would need to ship it.
Yeah. And does that include image loads? Right. I
Oh
would
my
think
gosh.
so. because it says object access.
Yeah.
Oh, you're talking for every process that you run. You're talking maybe 100 libraries that it needs
Oh my
Mm.
gosh.
each time, right?
Yeah.
That's forensics right there.
Well, you know, the interesting thing is I'm actually looking back through this to see exactly what they're doing. This is just, you must collect these logs. This isn't even, hey, you need to analyze these logs, because the other part is, oh yeah, you need to allow FBI or CISA access to these logs upon request and to the extent consistent with applicable law. So, FBI comes in, is like, okay, you've been breached, give us all your logs. And okay, here's 25 terabytes of data. So where do you want me to put that? You got a thumb drive or
Yeah,
something?
but 25 terabytes, even for a medium-sized organization, isn't going to be 12 months if they do that on every system.
Right.
They're going to be logging out with turning on all of this. They're going to do
Right.
25 terabyte a day
Oy.
times however many days is in 12 months. Well, I mean, that's a year. So
And this is an
365.
overreaction.
Yeah.
That's all it is.
Yeah. Well,
Like you might be able to store this kind of stuff for a day.
yeah. I've worked in the government side, and you can get a waiver for pretty much anything. I mean, if you can show, hey, we have $60,000 for logging. So, here's how we're collecting this stuff, or, we just don't have the budget to get to EL3. They do specify 2 years from, August 27th. So the idea is by 2023, they're supposed to be at EL level 3. So they are giving them 2 years to get up to, like, oh my God, crazy levels of logging. But
Yeah, I mean, they also have like database level access to sensitive information within databases, such as
Yeah.
keys, passwords, and privacy related data. So every bit of access, like in an EMR, right? You have
Right.
huge hospital system, every bit of access that gets logged 24/7.
Yeah, and I don't know how the VA is, but they're about 20 years behind on their 15 years
Oh.
behind on their IT stuff as it is. So I don't know how they would do this stuff. And to add to it, the government's got classified networks. So how is their classified networks going to work with this as well?
Right.
There's CIPRNet, JWIX, there's a ton, JADIS, all those things. I don't know if JADIS and JWIX are still around, but those were the TS level internets that I used to work on. And then CIPRNet, of course, those were the ones that the Navy used. And, there was a lot of NIPR, a lot of NIPRNet, but CIPRNet had very, very much little. I mean, we used IRC for, we had an IRC, server for that, but we had only like a tenth of our, information there. So having to log all that stuff on CIPR as well would be yet another problem. And storing that information is also going to cost money, not necessarily just time and effort of making sure that all of this stuff is configured properly. If only we knew somebody who would be able to run a script that could, log this stuff and set it up on Windows boxes. I just don't know anybody. Wow.
I wouldn't want to run the script that sent up all this though.
Hey, Mr. Betcher, government might be coming to you asking for,
right.
logging, get that fat stack of government cash right there for login
fee
B.
there.
There you go. Minimum $500 an hour. For an
Break
hour.
everybody's storage.
There you go.
Might be easier to air gap everything at this point.
Yeah. Yeah. If you're in the government, you have my sympathies. I got out of that a long time ago on purpose because I don't know how deep the hole goes, because does this cover government contractors as well as government contracting and officials? I mean, they just say federal information systems, both for on-prem and connections hosted by third parties such as cloud service providers. I know a lot of government contractors also interface with government systems. So is that going to be something that this is going to trickle down to the General Dynamics or the the SAICs of the world, where they're going to have to also enable this kind of stuff? So it'll be interesting to see what happens with this. So I found this out, the minimum viable security product. I think we'll go to that one. So something came out, I want to say Thursday or Friday. I posted it on into my my company internal chat, and everybody was like, oh yeah, we already have something like this. So the way I understand it, Google, Okta, Salesforce, and a couple of other companies, which they said Google, Salesforce, Okta, Slack, and more. So I don't know who's the and more, but it says it was developed and backed by companies across the industry, according to Google's security blog. They say 59% of companies have experienced a data breach caused by a vendor or third parties. Outsourcing to third parties has become popular as it allows organizations to save money and increase operational efficiency. I don't disagree with that. I've been dealing with third-party vendors since, I was working at, in the Navy, and then as a government contractor myself at Ultra Electronics in Austin. So, vendor management is a pain in the ass. Trying to vet vendors is a pain in the ass. Having to deal with things like SIG, which is the standard information questionnaire that you have to do in spreadsheet form, is difficult. So what Google and Okta, Slack, Salesforce, and more did was create what they call as a minimum viable security product. The idea being it's a vendor neutral security baseline designed to eliminate overhead, complexity, and confusion during procurement, RFP, and vendor security assessment process by establishing minimal acceptable security baselines, okay, so that's great. I can definitely see a lot of use for this, coming from, a company that where I had to fill these things out, both as a company that was going to integrate with a third party and then having a third party come in and do stuff for us. And I'm doing that now again, where I am currently. Not knowing the right questions to ask sometimes means that the vendor doesn't volunteer that information. So this is a nice little baseline checklisty looking thing that you can use to ask those questions. Or if you don't want to buy the several $100